Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 7 Episode 2, A New Approach. Before we begin though, make sure you watch the episode first through roosterteeth.com to support the show and avoid spoilers. Also, apologies for the delay of this review, being sick isn't fun at all. But what is fun is the fact that my reaction to the Volume 7 premiere finally got free for release recently, so if you haven't seen it, links in the description down below and the card above. Also, I must stress again, spoilers are ahead. And speaking of the first episode, it's time to highlight some viewer comments from my last review, starting off with DMM Tech, who, like many others, was surprised to see Penny return with her full memories, and reckons that detail will play into a troublesome plot point in the near future, while Justin Harris shared their joy at Penny's return, as well as their concern over Winter's attitude, given Ironwood's clearly stressed out mental state. And finally, Yvonne Chavez thankfully made sure that I wasn't the only one who thought the fight scene's backing track sounded like Trigun's opening theme. Don't forget, if you want to see your thoughts possibly featured in the next viewer segment, drop them in the comments down below and tune in next time to see if they pop up. So the volume began in quite the dramatic fashion last time out, with a wild start in Mantle and the dramatic return that was met with some positive and some understandably conflicted feelings. But now that this new episode was set to establish what's to come, and with the gang set to bump into some more old faces, was this episode able to continue the good form, or did it fail to accomplish its mission? Let's find out. With morale low after getting easily arrested by the Aesops, the gang's mention of the highly trained soldiers grabs the attention of another captive in the paddy wagon, a man by the name of Forrest, voiced by Eric Baldur, a content manager at Rooster Teeth and former member of Mega 64. This dude's pretty much an overzealous devout supporter of Robin Hill, the woman seen in the opening that's taken part in the election, and is also the leader of a faction that's apparently called the Happy Huntresses, an obvious play on Robin Hood's Merry Men, which, yeah, sounds about as silly as it does. I can't help but question if that's the actual official name, or if it's just something that other people have made up, and Robin just willingly accepts it. I mean, it doesn't exactly scream frustrated group fighting those who oppress and abuse the people of Mantle, does it? Also, I wonder if it's literally a group of huntresses, meaning all or mostly women, or if it's just them opting for the female title, given Robin's the leader. Anyway, through some silly if not slightly ham-fisted exposition, we also learn that Robin and some of her members were Atlas Academy graduates, but they opted out of joining the military as per the norm in Atlas, and instead formed the faction fighting for the improved conditions of Mantle. It's not just Ironwood that's got their ire though. Most people in Mantle aren't fans of most of the high-class law from Atlas, including the Schnee family, as Forrest dismisses Weiss's comments with clear disdain. And on the note of the higher class capital, we get our first good look at the city, at least from a distance. A pristine, cleaner version of Mantle. Quite the gorgeous shot that further highlights the vast divide between those living the good life in the clouds and those stuck looking up at them in the grime and muck down below. And slap right bang in the middle is the towering spire of Atlas Academy, meaning the gang has to quickly get their bearings together before seeing the general, with RWBY taking lead on what vital information they should share. The academy itself is about as imposing and refined as the main city, with barely any colour to it, leaning more to the look of a military base than a traditional school ground, a la Beacon or Haven, which does fit perfectly with the blending of school and military and the nature of its headmaster, who we see coming out of a less than positive council meeting alongside Penny and Winter, the two Atlas humans looking shocked to see who's just turned up on their doorstep in cuffs. Thankfully, Winter orders them to be freed, and everyone joins the general in his office as he shares some genuine joy seeing everyone again after so long, as well as apologizing for the harsh but fair reception they got given their transport. I gotta give special attention, by the way, to James having a silent little chuckle after RWBY confirms that they did indeed steal an airship to get here. I imagine this is one of the few moments that the general has had to drop his guard and share a casual emotion like this, and I have expected he also knew why they had to resort to Grand Theft Airship, considering who he's left to safeguard Argus. That little moment helps show that despite his stern nature and strong-arm tactics, Ironwood is still a normal person underneath his military bravado, and it helps ease some of the tension so his recent actions can be fairly called out without heavy backlash. Winter, though, is less than pleased with Weiss being at risk, but a hug from a sister that's been long overdue manages to quell her anger, at least towards Weiss. She's still peeved with Crow for not stopping the kids in the first place. Nice to know that even with a change in Crow's voice and the gap since these two last butted heads, some things will just never change. But it's time to talk about brass tacks and discuss certain classified topics. Topics that, it turns out, Penny and Winter are in the know on now. Turns out the General chose to trust some of his most loyal members, including the Aesops as well, with the existence of the relics, the maidens, and Salem. Quite surprising indeed, though I can see his logic. Without the rest of the primary group helming the fight against Salem, it's reasonable for Ironwood to build his own group to prepare for any efforts against Salem, without the aid of Ozpin to lead or Crow and Glyndon to confide in. My only concerns would be telling the Aesops, since that's a lot more numbers to trust the info with, and, well, telling Penny, considering fears over her getting hacked. And now the gang is here with the Relic of Knowledge in tow, Ironwood feels more confident in his plans to finally end Salem once and for all. Of course, as the headmaster of Atlas, he's also got the kingdom's own relic on hand, the Staff of Creation, which is locked safe in the vault, wherever that is. And he also has the Winter Maiden already safe and sound, and in stable condition. That's a curious little detail to say the least. Same for Crow, mentioning that she's not exactly a spring chicken. So, 1, Crow already knows who the current Winter Maiden is, since he knows she's not a young lady, and 2, the wording of stable condition makes it sound like she's not been in the best of health lately, and if the small sideways look by Winter is anything to take note of, I think there's one obvious contender for who the Winter Maiden is. Her mother, Miss Schnee. I mean, unless it's a totally new character, the one affectionately known by fans as Willow would fit the bill as an adult woman with a known alcohol problem, and it would be easy to keep her safe, at least for now, since she's kept to herself inside the Schnee Manor, no thanks to Jacques. Though, man, that's a rather worrisome notion. The mother of Winter and Weiss being a maiden, someone that is targeted by the bad guys for their own schemes. I'm kinda worried now for Willow's chances of survival once we're done with Atlas. Though in turn, the odds of either Weiss or Winter becoming the Winter Maiden suddenly just skyrocketed. Definitely something to put a pin in until we get confirmation on the Maiden's identity. But damn if that doesn't sound like some tasty drama, should it come to pass. Anyway, for as good as Ironwood's intentions are in letting in others on such gigantic secrets, a team with the recent embargo and the military recall does raise some cautionary flags over his attitude and his actions, and this gets questioned by some of the gang, especially in regards to the General's actions that's causing strife for the people of Mantle, turning him into public enemy number 1. Something that Ironwood is willing to accept if it means he can avoid another sneak attack. Thing is, he's saying that it's a price that he's willing to pay, but it's still the people of Mantle who are suffering the most. He can say that the ends justify the means, but surely there's a way to patrol the city and not make things rougher on Mantle than it already is, with the dust mining and lower living conditions. Regardless, to further try and gain our hero's trust, he begins revealing his grand plan, which comes down to 2 major steps. Step 1. Fix the ongoing issue of world communication being offline by repurposing Amity Coliseum and turning it into Amity Tower, a brand new satellite that will be sent high into the atmosphere out of the reach of the Grimm, and it will be able to work regardless of any future damages to the remaining Kingdom CCT towers. Like RWBY says, this is actually a great idea. The lack of global communications has been an issue long due a fix, and it would help improve the morale of the world, hopefully leading to less Grimm attacks. I am curious though about it being sent into the skies above, as back in the CCTS World of Remnant episode, it was revealed that previous efforts to launch a satellite network has failed before, due to dust losing its properties the further it leaves the planet's atmosphere. So the question now is, how did Atlas figure it out? Did they somehow find the perfect altitude to keep gravity dust active? Or is it even using gravity dust anymore at all, and instead is perhaps some new Atlas technology? Could the Staff of Creation have something to do with it? I hope there is a logical explanation, and it's not just the writers glancing over that detail, as it is such a key element to dust usage. And that's not even going into other possible features that Atlas could give this satellite. I mean, look, I like Ironwood, he is a good guy at heart, but he's often gone for the preemptive tactic to avoid any chance of conflict before it happens. And he isn't afraid to cross some morally grey lines, considering his approval of the Aura experiments and the creation of a weapon disguised as a human girl. I just fear that Ironwood may include some kind of, I don't know, surveillance system in Amity Tower to keep watch on everyone, everywhere in Remnant. Kinda like the Watchtower in Justice League. I can't imagine the other kingdoms would appreciate such an invasive breach of privacy in the hands of any kingdom, let alone Atlas. Of course, I could just be talking total nonsense, but then there's step 2 of Ironwood's plans, revealing Salem's existence to the people of Remnant. Talk about a bold strategy. This also explains why the military got called back to base, because Ironwood plans to start by first telling the people of Atlas, and in accepting such news will cause panic, will have his forces counter the resulting Grimm attacks until the populace have calmed down and prepared themselves for the fight against Salem. Okay, so to his credit, I get where he's coming from. By putting everyone's attention on Salem, it gives humanity a singular enemy to hopefully unite against, if the people of Remnant wants the world to be a better place. And one of Salem's biggest strengths is her ability to create plans and tactics whilst in secrecy. That much I can get behind. But there's a lot of holes in this plan that can blow up in Ironwood's face. Firstly, once again, Ironwood is risking the people's safety as a result of looking to brute force the problem. It's what he wanted to do with the enemy forces at Mountain Glen, and he's doing so again, this time with the people of Atlas and the vulnerable Mantle in the crossfire. Secondly, to add to this, if his hope is that the people of Atlas will eventually calm down and unite together to join their forces against Salem, he's shooting himself in the foot by letting the people of Mantle continue to suffer and despise him. Yes, he could say that the military will defend them from the influx of Grimm, but once the people of Mantle combine their current hatred for the capital, the military, and Ironwood with feelings of anger after being thrusted into more harm because of the military and Ironwood, it's only going to cause further negative emotions and a larger divide between the lower class and the higher class, meaning more Grimm and less odds of the people coming together. Oh yeah, and how about the other kingdoms and how they will react? While unfairly so, there's a lot of people in the world who currently blame Atlas for the fall of Beacon. And if Atlas came around asking the other kingdoms to trust them for some giant battle against the leader of the Grimm, I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of folks say that they couldn't trust the kingdom that's already involved in another previous tragedy. Not to mention the other kingdoms are in a terrible state as is. Does Ironwood really think that Vale, Mistral and Vacuo are in any shape to take on the Grimm and someone like Salem? Vale's lost many of its huntsmen and is still dealing with their own endless swarm of Grimm. Meanwhile, Mistral's lost even more huntsmen and the headmaster of Haven. And going off events and details from the After the Fall book, Vacuo is heavily nomadic, with people there barely getting by in the harsh deserts. None of the other kingdoms right now are in a good condition to go off and fight a war, and while Atlas would come in to aid the fighting off the Grimm, I fear they would be overestimating their chances of successfully protecting every city, big or small, across 3 massive kingdoms. I haven't even mentioned Menagerie or any smaller islands like Patch. Those guys would be toast without any of the defenses that major cities have, and they would be long dead before Atlas would be able to reach them in time. And then there's the final question that I gotta ask. What does Ironwood possibly have in mind to permanently kill Salem? Surely he's not just hoping on military might and large numbers, because if someone like Ozpin with his incredible magical powers couldn't stop her, what good would human resources and a large battalion do? Does he have some kind of super weapon? Does he plan to use the relics or the maidens? This is my biggest problem with his plan, and the discussion he has with the heroes. He never reveals his means to kill Salem, and until he does, I have very little faith in his plans working out in any shape or form. And that's not even taking into account that we know Salem can't be destroyed, according to Jin, and that Salem is about to launch her own attack, so Ironwood might not even be able to reveal her existence on his terms. But you know what? I'm actually liking this as a narrative point, because it's true to Ironwood's character. He's always shown to be stubborn and proactive when it comes to his plan of attack, and keeping in mind his clearly worn down state of mind, the idea of him creating this extremely drastic and problematic move is compelling in its weak points, and just how desperate he's become, which results in a fresh new issue for the heroes to deal with, a good intentioned plan that may not do as much good as first hoped, especially since Ironwood looks like he needs as much saving right now as the rest of the world. It doesn't excuse or overlook how flawed his plan is or how confusing it looks without all the details, but it's something dangerously exciting for both him, the fate of the kingdom, and the ongoing battle with Salem, so color me curious to see where it all pans out. But yeah, the guy does either need the mother of all sleeps or some really good news right now. Cue then Crow revealing that Oscar is the new Ozpin, something that does genuinely please Ironwood, at least before the farm boy clarifies that Ozpin is currently absent inside his head, which leads to RWBY lying about the reason why he's like that, as well as hiding the fact that Salem can't be destroyed and that the Relic of Knowledge still has one question available to ask. Now this is something that's caused quite the stir in the fandom, and to be fair, I can't see why. RWBY, the leader of the group that just last volume challenged Ozpin for hiding vital secrets from them, is now hiding vital secrets from Ironwood. It's quite the hypocritical flip reverse of roles, especially with Ironwood clearly trying his best to gain their trust. Whatever her intentions, RWBY is doing pretty much the same thing that she and the rest of the girls blasted Ozpin for doing in the past, and after the backlash that caused, it is surprising to see RWBY taking up that same approach when it doesn't really feel like it was extremely necessary. So, okay, let's try and understand her reasoning, or at least speculate what it is. My belief is that she was likely trying to be sure that Ironwood really is worth trusting, since the last headmaster they dealt with that looked a bit shady with some questionable decisions turned out to be a big problem. And again, with Ironwood not giving the full details on how he plans to end Salem for good, I can get why she didn't tell him everything they know. If he's not being completely transparent, why should they? Plus, she could also be taking into account Ironwood's current emotional state before dropping such a big bomb that would totally ruin the General's plans. And she may also be wanting to wait until she and the others have a chance to properly plan out how to discuss such details with Ironwood, since they've had no time to prepare before now. That much I can buy into. But I can admit, on the other hand, I can understand why people are saying that since Ironwood's plan could turn into a huge catastrophe, shouldn't she tell Ironwood about Jin saying that Salem can be destroyed? RWBY doesn't need to go into every detail about the fallout with Ozpin, but that's still big information that could avoid people getting needlessly hurt. Whatever was the cause for this, it's easily RWBY's boldest move in some time, even more so than challenging Ozpin in the first place, considering the risks at play. But I am going to save my full judgment on this until we get to hear her explain herself, and we see what everyone else has to say. A few of them did look surprised at RWBY's decision, so hopefully the parallels to the Ozpin issue and the fallout from this move by RWBY will affect the story to come in some engaging ways. I should give some praise as well to just how well this scene is directed, in my opinion. There's a lot of talking going on here, and after Volume 5 didn't exactly strike gold with such scenes, I suspect that there's a lot of people still weary of future dialogue heavy scenes. Thankfully, I do feel the RWBY did a stable job here, which I think is quite an achievement considering the tone of the scene and the nature of some of the cast. Ironwood doesn't really lend himself to being the most expressive of characters, as you would expect for a man of his position. But what helps a lot of Ironwood's dialogue is the moments of his demeanor shifting, the small chuckle from before, the reaction to hearing Ozpin is back, his warm smiling as he shows one more sign of good faith by giving RWBY the lamp back. It helps ease the tension and adds some charm to his discussions, while the General's muted body language does keep him largely restrained. The camera angles were also pretty varied to make up for everyone being on edge, and the use of the projection offers some visual aid to the topics, so we're not just watching characters flap their gums, and props as well to the smartly timed use of music. The majority of this scene's score is pretty much silent, letting the dialogue take center stage. That way, when it does come in, it only elevates the mood that the conversation is taking, like the switch from a gentle, hopeful melody for the positive goal of Amity Tower to bassy, dread-filled notes that hang for a while, which follow the more troublesome step of revealing Salem to the world. Excellent stuff that makes this scene gain all the gravitas that it needed and help the flow of it pass smoother in response to the general cautionary atmosphere that it has, which is kinda tricky to get immersed in without quality writing, visual presentation, and audible support, which again, I do think this scene is qualified with. So, with the plan scoped out somewhat, Ironwood looking to aid Oscar in trying to bring Ozpin back, and RWBY finally willing to offer the team's aid where possible, Ironwood gives one more promising show of trust and cooperation by proposing some upgrades for the team. Looks like the next episode might be time to finally see the new looks in action. Before we talk about the moment with the gang and the Aesops next, there are a few side notes I want to cover. Firstly, it looks like Blake already has her upgrade, as this shot shows her in her old white jacket look from the last volume. Oops. And then we need to have a glance at the Academy bulletin in the background, because there's some really big, earth-shattering details hidden within. The administration bathrooms are getting repaired! Oh, and Jacques is confirmed to be the one running against Robin in the election. Turns out as well that the Academy is hosting a watch party for the results announcement. So while this might not be the fabled Atlas Ball rumor coming true, it does at least suggest that there is going to be some kind of party held at the Academy, that we could see some of the familiar faces like Flint and Neon present as well. Also, on a possible smaller detail, Penny is getting rewarded next Monday with the Employee of the Month. And I can't help but feel that this and the watch party might be targets for the villain's schemes. But back to present events, Clover apologizes for the wrongful arrest, and we get introduced to the rest of his team, starting with El Maderne, a jolly giant of a woman that is voiced by Dawn M. Bennett, the woman behind roles such as Lilac from Freedom Planet, Kel from the Dragon Ball universe, and Frosh from Fairy Tail. Dawn is also another returning RWBY voice, since she was last seen warming our hearts as Ren's mother, Arn. Next is Maro Amin, a bit of a prideful wolf faunus who's played by Mick Laura, aka Rice Pirate, who has played the likes of Leona Baccio from the JoJo Bizarre Adventure series, God King Garen from League of Legends, and the Badge Seller from A Hat in Time. Following him is Harriet Bree, a competitive tomboy it seems, who's played by Enerys Quinones. She's previously played Crested Porcupine from Kimono Friends, Pirate Admiral Change from Smite, and Ursula from My Time at Portia. And finally, there's the very monk-mannered man, Vine Zeki, voiced by comedian, actor, and creative producer at Rooster Teeth, Todd Womack, who you may know for his work on The Key of Awesome on YouTube, or for causing mayhem on any of Rooster Teeth's extra live streams lately, dressed up as Voldemort. So, with the Aesops all finally given a name, a voice, and a little bit of character, we can get a better grasp on which Aesop tale they each represent. So let's get into that. Clover, we know, is based on a fisherman's good luck, as explored in the last review, and Harriet has to be from the well-known tale of the tortoise and the hare. Plus there's her competitive nature, much like Hare with the race, and going off her weapon from the opening, they also share some speedy skills. The other three are quite interesting though. I mean, a lot of folks seem to believe that Maro is a clear reference to The Boy Who Cried Wolf, given the animal trait there, and his lying about his excited feelings and bragging about apparently being barred somewhere, which may play off the Fable Boy's penchant for lying. But there's also the case, and the strong one at that he could be based on The Dog and Its Reflection, the tale of a dog that lost some meat on a bone after thinking its reflection in a river was a dog with a better bone. Finally, there's Elm and Vine, with the pair of them possibly sharing the same fable origin, fittingly called The Elm and the Vine, a tale of an elm tree that has little to cherish without the vine growing on it, which, without the elm tree, the vine can't grow and prosper. The fact that these two's origins is intertwined together could mean that they are a pair, such as combat partners, or even perhaps as a couple, since vines growing on elm trees are a sign of marriage. That's about as much as the fandom and myself have been able to theorize, but at least we've managed to nail down some strong contenders. And even beyond their illusions, it's great to finally meet them all and get a feel for who they are as characters. So far, I really like Elm and Harriet for their personality quirks and eye-catching designs, and I can't wait to see more of these lot, especially since I can see some rivalry parallels amongst them and our heroes. Maybe we'll see that in play very soon, because they're all going to be teaming up for a mission, most likely the scene from the trailer leading to the dust mines. And before the scene closes, we get a strangely affectionate embrace from Ironwood to Crow. A little bit awkward considering Crow's not exactly too fond of Ironwood at most times, but it's still sweet in its own way. But I can't help but worry that there might be more to it, like maybe Ironwood slipped on a tracker or a hidden microphone to see how trustworthy the others really are. But I want to hold faith that his intentions were being sincere. But the episode isn't done yet. While Penny gives the gang a tour of the academy, we dive back down to Mantle to discover that old Waluigi Legs himself, Arthur Watts, is in town, alongside Tyrion. The pair speaking over communications and keeping active to avoid detection, though they should be fine considering Watts is doing his best Watch Dogs impression by hacking everything around him. Cause it turns out, while Atlas has updated its security system following the events in Beacon, they didn't do the same for Mantle. And for the guy who helped build the security code for the city's network in the first place, it's child's play to mess with, like turning off all the security cameras with just a push of a button. Once again, Ironwood, for all the good that he is doing, is leaving Mantle a sitting duck. It's hardly a good sign when he's willing to turn Mantle into a police state with patrols, drones, and the likes of Penny and the Aesops keeping watch, but he's not even being fair to the city by giving it the same security protections as Atlas. Very foolish, when he knows too well that being hacked was a big part of his failure in Beacon, and I suspect this will come back to bite him in the backside very soon. And Tyrion seems to be up to no good either, as the episode ends with the sinister Faunus having killed someone in secret. Possibly another reporter like we saw with the first episode's bulletin report, or some other kind of figure whose death could cause ripple effects in the election process, should these two troublemakers look to cause mayhem with the voting. So, quite a lot to digest in this episode, that's for sure. And while not the most visually captivating at points, what does make this a strong watch is the exciting plot points it sets up for the volume. Several characters have planted the seeds of future drama and conflict, and now we have a better grasp of what's to come from all parties. And for the most part, every discussion felt natural, even with a few elements that does need further exploration to truly get the full intentions. As I discussed earlier, it was very easy to have the bulk of this episode be this drawn out, uninteresting rambling session with little to give a care about. But through some capable writing, effective use of music, and engaging work with the camera angles and character expressions, I honestly felt the scene in Ironwood's office flew by way better than I expected. Ironwood, by the way, is easily the most complex and intriguing he's ever been in the series, with his well-meaning motivations tinged with dangerous side effects, keeping me from hating the guy, at least for now. Winter was also just as entertaining as before, though hopefully she has more to offer the story this time out compared to her first outing. She still did have some charming moments though, showing that she really does shine as a character when bouncing off others, like Weiss, Ironwood or Crow. Everyone's performance was very solid, with Nora being a big saving grace with her lighthearted humour when necessary. Some of the background visuals were beautiful, a first real moment with the Aesops was cool for just how short it was, and the final moments with Watts and Tyrion already make them feel like a dangerous spanner in the works compared to past villain scenarios where they felt too disconnected from what the heroes were up to, or they weren't a factor until much later in the volume. Not everything was spot on though. The insight on Robin and her faction was a tad forced, and not as natural as it could have been even with Forrest and his cartoonish exuberance. Also, the Academy tour with Penny, while charming in its own right, wasn't really all that important, and it probably could have been cut altogether. And finally, some plot points do need further insight to clarify some doubts and confusion, like Amity Tower and Ruby's reason to lie, which could be seen as a big negative, as it's something that needs another episode to make sense of it. And with that, it's time to give my episode awards, beginning with the character of the episode going to James Ironwood. Like I said, he feels so much more layered and exciting as a character, and the little moments of humanity breaking through his general persona helped me warm up to the guy, even with some of his worrisome actions and his thought process. This is also why I'm giving Jason Rose the voice acting gold star, as I think he showed great ability to blend in those little moments of earnest, positive emotions with the stoic, determined mindset of a soldier gearing up for battle. And finally, the scene of the episode goes to Ruby lying to Ironwood. Sure, like I said, it needs another episode to explain her actions, but it is still a massive moment for the sincere and honest soul, and it is the biggest talking point from the episode, so that's enough reasoning for me. And those are my final thoughts on the episode. While not a blockbuster in terms of visuals or edge-of-the-seat moments, I'd still say the episode succeeded at what it laid out to do, lay the groundwork for the narrative for the volume, and even further beyond, make it an engaging scene that puts many of the cast in new, exciting situations. It didn't need to be overtly animated, especially considering some of the players involved, but it's the emotions and the intent that really made me curious in what's being set up. I'd say the premiere episode is the more entertaining chapter so far, with more memorable moments that I can see myself coming back to, but for what this episode had to achieve, I think this was a fine enough job. Well done. But those are just my thoughts. Time to make sure you tell me yours. What's your take on Ironwood's plan? Do you trust the General? What do you feel about RWBY's secrecy? And who's your favourite so far from the Aesops? Let me know in the comments down below, and see if your comment gets featured in the next review by tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and bell button, and click the notification box to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop. And follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on anything to do with RWBY, updates on future content for the channel, and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.